Mystery manga. It's a genre that isn't too popular. I mean, there are some standouts like Monster and 20th Century Boys, which are both written by Naoki Urasawa. There's plenty of mystery in some manga, but very few times is it the main focus of the story. That was when I stumbled across this image while scrolling through Mangadex. This volume cover is from A Suffocatingly Lonely Death, written by Inryu Hajime and illustrated by Ito Shota. This duo is well known for one of their previous works, My Dearest Self with Malice Aforethought, which I unfortunately haven't read yet, but I will in the future. As I was reading this manga, I found myself really enjoying the story. It hits all the beats you would want from a detective thriller story and has very good twists. In this video, I'll be giving you a basic rundown of the story, as well as going over a little bit of the mystery and the way the manga portrays trauma. Then I'll finish off by talking about the art. Also, this is a dark manga that covers some dark topics, like these that are on the screen, so this is a warning, and if any of these topics upset you, then maybe consider clicking off the video. If you want to avoid spoilers, I recommend clicking off now and going and reading this story, but if you don't mind spoilers or have already read this story, then enjoy the video. The story begins with a woman walking through the snow and crosses are spread across the ground. We see the woman standing in what I'm assuming is a makeshift graveyard as the snow falls around her. We see that the year is 2006 as a car drives up to a gate and a man gets out and looks up at something. We see he is looking at a massive mansion in the countryside. The man introduces himself to the police officers as Seiki Jin, a detective arriving at the mansion. He talks with the police officers before heading into the mansion. As they enter, we can see that the place is trashed, with furniture and pictures thrown across the room. As of right now, the officers suspect someone who has been nicknamed the Crown Thief of burglary. They talk about how there seems to be no sign of a struggle and that the burglar must have entered while the owner was away. They haven't been able to contact the owner of the property, whose name is Haikawa Juzo, and the neighbours haven't seen him in years. They wonder if the owner might have gone missing, but one of the officers mentioned he has already checked to see if the owner has a missing report, but he couldn't find anything. The detective mentions how the house seems well kept for something that has been abandoned and it even has power. He asks for a background check on the owner. As he continues walking, he notices a painting and it's Saturn devouring his son by Francisco Goya, which a new officer points out. The young officer apologizes for being late and introduces himself as Officer Suzuki to the detective. They continue talking about the painting and how it must be counterfeit because the thief would have surely taken it if it was real. Quick pause here, but Saturn devouring his son sold for £4.5 million in 1992, so it would be worth an insane amount of money today or in 2006. I just thought I'd add that. Now back to the video. The detective notices that every flower in the house is fake. That, as well as the counterfeit painting, seems odd to the detective. He wonders why someone would decorate the house with imitations. A police officer comes up with the possible explanation, but the detective then trails off towards another room. It's a kid's room. He notices that there's more than one, with children's drawings in them. The detective is surprised because the owner was meant to be living by himself, but it seems he had many kids here. The detective's train of thought is broken by someone calling out to him. They have found a locked entrance to the basement. They decide to call a locksmith and wait for them to open the lock. The detective goes back inside and goes through DVDs he's found in the house, and he thinks to himself that he's more curious about the owner of the house, Haikawa Juzo, than the theft. He then finds a completely black DVD cover and thinks it's an adult film, and without a second thought goes to play it. He quickly realizes it's not an adult film, but something terrible involving the house. He screams in horror. After a brief jump in time, we see two more detectives arrive at the mansion. They greet Detective Seiki, who is wearing a gaunt expression. They ask where his elite officer vibe went, and he just tells them to look at the video. The video was taken from the basement and showed children being kept in there and starved to death. The children all dying of starvation, except a few that clung to life and ate the others. The detectives are all clearly shaken. In the end, they discovered 13 bodies in the basement, and Haikawa Juzo was charged with the crimes, and his name made it onto the nationwide wanted list. We now cut to Detective Seiki at home. He mentions that thanks to today's events, he's been reminded of the past. He then goes to take a shower. As he's showering, he thinks about how his father was one of those people who you can tell by the way they open the door, how loud their footsteps were, and how deep their voice can be, what mood they are in. His moods were bad, very bad, and the worst, as we see a flashback of Seiki as a kid. His father stomps towards him, yelling out his name, and Seiki hides in his closet. We see how scared he is and how he remembers trying his best to hide from his dad when his mood was like this. We then see that his dad found him. We cut back to current Seiki and see his back scarred, clearly from abuse he suffered from his dad. He says he will never forgive those that abuse children. We then see him say that he will capture Haikawa himself with a determined expression on his face, and I really like the art in this panel. It captures the tone really well. The next day, Detective Seiki is talking with another detective, and they go over Haikawa's information and find that not only has he never been married, but he has no birth registration or acknowledgement of having a kid. So now they need to figure out who the 13 children were. They continue talking, and the other detective mentions that there's been a lot of cases involving children lately, and talks about a man who goes into abusive homes and beats the abusive fathers. They then arrive at the police station and notice a girl waiting out front. She smiles at the detective and asks if he's a part of the police force. She reveals that she's here because she heard about the 13 dead children. She gives her name, Hazumi Kanon. She then says that Haikawa is her father. The detective takes her in to interview her as the other detectives watch in another room. They awkwardly chat before Detective Seiki asks her about her relationship with Haikawa. She says that they aren't blood related, nor did he actually adopt her, and she apologizes, saying that she can't explain it well. The detective tells her to take her time in explaining it. She asks about the kids' identities, and the detective tells her that they are still investigating. She then explains that she doesn't know where Haikawa is, as they haven't seen each other in years, but she says that she lived in the mansion 4 years ago. She tells him this because she wants to help them find where those kids came from. She begins talking about when she first met Haikawa 12 years ago. She didn't have anything to eat, and she can't remember how she used to survive each day. She was an abandoned child, she had no father, and her mother would regularly leave and not give her enough to survive on. She remembers meeting him on a cold, snowy winter day, and we see her as a child in the snow. She begins eating the snow until she hears someone tell her that he would stop that if he was her. He tells her the snow is full of germs, and she turns back to look at the man, and we get our first look at Haikawa, and Hazumi remembers thinking he looked like an angel of death. Well, that concludes the first chapter, and I really liked it. It sets up a cool mystery and leaves you with a good cliffhanger. I was very excited to continue reading. Now, if you don't want any more spoilers for the manga, then click off now, but in these next 2 parts, I will be talking mostly about the characters and the art, so if you don't mind that, then let's continue. As the mystery begins to unravel, we follow Detective Seiki and Hazumi as they begin to piece together Haikawa's involvement in the crimes. Detective Seiki is motivated by seeking justice for the murdered children, and Hazumi is motivated to prove that her father, Haikawa, had no involvement. A little bit of backstory, but it's revealed by Hazumi that Haikawa actually invited a lot of children from troubled backgrounds to live with him, and he took good care of them. We even see these children grow up, coming to protest their father's innocence. It's actually a very interesting twist in the story, but as we learn, these kids exhibit some troubling behaviour, which are no doubt a result of their poor upbringings they endured. Throughout the manga, we see how the different characters cope with their troubled past, and it's actually nice to see as these people try to move forward with their lives, and it adds a nice personal element to the story that I really enjoyed following throughout the series' progression. The mystery itself takes many twists and turns, but I won't be spoiling any more in this video. I may make a follow-up video when the manga is completed where I go over the specifics of the mystery. This mystery does, however, have our protagonist travelling across Japan to trace small leads, and is overall a very enjoyable plot to follow. I think most readers would enjoy following along. Now to the art, and it's very detailed. Ito Shota does a phenomenal job with the characters, especially in facial expressions. Characters are very expressive and their faces are so softly drawn, but he can change that for more intense scenes. The art on the volume covers is so good, like the volume covers for 4 and 9, they had me hooked instantly. You can't help but wanting to see who these characters are in this story. For those that like gore, there is a little bit in some scenes involving the antagonists, and the action scenes are drawn nicely. Reading this series feels like I'm watching a good detective thriller. It hits all the right notes. Overall, I think the art suits the series very well. It has a nice simple paneling system that keeps the scenes organized and neat. I think this is a great read for anyone that likes a good mystery or thriller story. It has a good collection of characters and an engaging mystery that keeps you invested each chapter. The only drawback is that there's only 26 chapters right now, so we'll have to wait and see how this story plays out. Well, that concludes this video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.